The shrunken head of the Jivaro Tribe is no mere artifact, but a vessel of lingering malevolence that carries with it a dark history of war, ritual, and violence. The Jivaro people, known for their fierce and deadly practices, lived in the remote jungles of Ecuador and Peru. Their infamous tradition of headhunting involved killing their enemies, removing their heads, and performing a ritualistic process of shrinking the skin and preserving the face, turning the human skull into a hollow, twisted memento. These tsantsas, or shrunken heads, were believed to trap the spirit of the slain individual, rendering them powerless and unable to seek revenge. The Jivaro believed that possessing the head would bring the strength and protection of their fallen adversary. The shrunken head in question had once belonged to a young warrior, someone who had met a brutal end at the hands of the Jivaro. The head was taken as a trophy after a violent battle and subjected to the gruesome and sacred ritual of shrinking. Once completed, the head was meant to hold a piece of the dead man's soul. For the Jivaro, these heads were far from simply symbolic. They were imbued with power. The process itself was said to bind the spirit to the physical object, creating an inescapable link between the living and the dead. How it found its way into the hands of an American collector remains shrouded in mystery. What is known, however, is that it came into the possession of a man who had long been fascinated with the occult and exotic artifacts. He was part of a group of Western adventurers and antiquities dealers who, during the late 18 and early 19, sought to bring back rare and strange items from distant lands. When the head arrived at his home in the United States, it was immediately displayed in a glass case in the living room, a proud yet morbid addition to his growing collection of curiosities. The moment the head was placed in the home, strange occurrences began. At first, it was subtle, a chill in the air, the occasional flicker of lights, but soon the activity escalated. The family began to hear strange noises, particularly late at night. The sounds were low and guttural, as if someone was whispering in a language foreign to them. Sometimes it was followed by the distinct sound of something scratching at the walls, as though the very spirit of the head was trying to break free from its glass prison. These noises would become louder and more frequent, with no clear explanation. It wasn't long before the family began experiencing more sinister disturbances. Objects in the house, especially near the display case where the head was kept, began to move inexplicably. Books were found scattered on the floor, furniture shifted in the night, and one evening, the entire living room was covered in a thin layer of dust, despite the fact that the family had cleaned just hours before. As if to taunt them, the dust appeared in bizarre patterns, often in the shape of footprints that seemed to lead directly to the glass case. Then came the visions. Members of the family reported seeing fleeting shadows in the corner of their eyes, figures that vanished as quickly as they appeared. But it wasn't just the shadows that troubled them. It was the feeling of being watched. No matter where they went in the house, it felt as though the presence of the head was always with them, looming over them, staring them down with its hollow, lifeless eyes. The feeling was overwhelming, suffocating, like an unseen force pressing down on their chests. But the true horror began when one of the children, an 11-year-old boy, was drawn into the mystery. He had always been curious about the head, often staring at it for hours, fascinated by the dark, ancient power it seemed to exude. One night, as the family slept, the boy woke up to the sound of whispering, distinct from the usual sounds that had plagued the house. It was coming from the living room. Unable to resist, he crept out of bed and made his way down the dark hallway toward the source of the sounds. As he approached the living room, he felt a sudden, intense pain in his chest, sharp and sudden, like a physical blow. He staggered backward, clutching at his heart, but the pain didn't subside. It was as if something was inside him trying to tear him apart from the inside out. Panicked, he turned to run but collapsed at the door, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The pain ceased only when he stumbled away from the room, and even then, the boy was left shaken and pale, unable to explain what had happened. The next morning, the boy found a deep, mysterious bruise on his chest in the exact location where he had felt the pain. The bruise wasn't from any physical injury. There were no marks on his skin to indicate how it had appeared, and it seemed almost as if it had materialized overnight. Doctors were baffled, unable to provide any medical explanation, and his condition remained poor for weeks afterward. He became lethargic, his spirit broken, as if some dark force had drained him of his energy. After this incident, the disturbances grew even more violent. Family members would wake up with strange scratches and bruises on their bodies, seemingly without cause. The glass case would rattle at night, and the head itself, though still displayed under glass, seemed to pulsate with energy as though it was alive. Some guests, upon visiting the house, reported feeling dizzy, nauseous, and overcome with a sense of dread. One woman, who had spent a considerable amount of time in the room with the head, claimed she saw the face of the shrunken head contort into an expression of rage, as though the very spirit inside it had become aware of her presence. Finally, unable to bear the mounting terror, the family decided to sell the head, hoping to rid themselves of the oppressive force that had taken over their home. It was auctioned to a museum, and it wasn't long before the horror followed. Those who worked closely with the head reported a sudden, inexplicable sense of fear whenever they were near it. Some said they felt a cold breeze that seemed to come from nowhere, while others claimed they heard faint whispers when they stood too close. One curator, who was particularly intrigued by the head, spent hours alone in the museum late one night studying it. He later claimed to have experienced vivid nightmares in which he was chased by the spirit of the warrior whose head had been taken. The nightmares were so intense that the curator's health began to deteriorate. He became paranoid, agitated, and withdrawn, his eyes hollow, as though he had seen something far worse than any nightmare could offer. His colleagues grew concerned, but he refused to speak about what he had experienced. Though it is still displayed in the museum, the shrunken head of the Jivaro tribe remains an object of fascination and fear. Visitors often report feeling a heavy presence in the room, and many feel the sensation of being watched, even if no one is near. Some claim to have seen the eyes of the head shift, while others have left the museum suddenly feeling ill, as if something had followed them home. Its curse seems to persist, a dark reminder of the brutal customs of the Jivaro people and the restless spirits trapped in the objects they left behind.
Enjoyed the content? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more awesome videos your way. Don't forget to click the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.